Welcome to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. I'm Kim McLaughlin, your host. I am a psychotherapist, coach, best-selling author, speaker, and blogger. I talk about all things having to do with wellness, emotional eating, and mental wellness. Today we have a really interesting topic that we haven't talked about before, and I'm calling it Nourishing the Soul, Understanding Emotional Eating Through a Mindfulness Lens. We're going to talk about how mindfulness nourishes your soul and moves you off of needing to use food as a way to cope. It's really powerful. You're going to come away with a lot of doables and more understanding for yourself about what you can do to feed your soul. Let's get started. I call my website Feed Your Soul. So when we talk about mindfulness and spirituality, I think about how we're feeding our soul. And when we look about food, it's really comes in the lens of, or the place of where we're in this fast-paced world. We're in a place where things come at us really strong. And oftentimes when it feels like there's too much coming at us, there can be emotional eating where we kind of lose our center and start to eat in a way that doesn't feel okay. And I know that there's a lot going on right now around weight loss plans, a lot of talk about pills and shots and surgery and doing things to lessen your eating. And I don't have an opinion on those, except that let's look at when we're emotional eating, because no matter what you use to kind of help out your eating, like what about emotional eating? And it's really when we use eating as a way to cope with our lives, to help our lives feel better. And I see the emotional eating come from stress, anxiety, depression, boredom, loneliness. It comes in response to all those things. And it's, sometimes one time somebody said to me, well, doesn't everybody overeat? Yes. Everybody overeats at certain times. Generally, you can find that happen at Halloween time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, a holiday, a birthday. Yeah. I eat cake when I'm not really hungry. And we talk about that in intuitive eating is eating when you're hungry. But sometimes I'm not hungry, but there's cake and I'd like to have it. But it's not where I eat to the point where I feel bad about myself. And I think what we miss talking about is one of our components is mindfulness. And so there's physical, emotional, mental, lifestyle, mindfulness, and then self-love and self-care. So when we talk about mindfulness, I think we miss part of it when we don't talk about how important it is and how much we can be missing on our physical nourishment, our emotional nourishment, but we also can be missing on our spiritual nourishment of how we really feed our souls. So I think of really going in deeper in terms of that mindfulness and spiritual lens, because we can see with overeating, with emotional eating, that it can be a form of misalignment, right? Between our behaviors and our inner needs, what we do and how we feel on the inside. And I think of the strategy is how do we get into more of our balance between that emotional, that physical, and that spiritual side so that we feel more in alignment within ourselves. So if we're going to look at mindfulness as part of spirituality, I think at first we have to talk about spirituality in my world does not equal religion. And religion is something separate. And I acknowledge that people have certain religious beliefs, and I acknowledge it. And I think what I love about a spiritual idea is that it transcends religion. It's about how we're connected to the deeper part of ourselves, that deeper connection, and that can include some idea of religion or God or Jesus or Buddha whatever it might be for you, but we want to get in touch with that inner part of ourselves that really, to me, goes beyond that religious idea. So how do we do that? I think one of the first ways to do it is to start looking at awareness. We always talk about, where do we start? We start with awareness. We start with what's going on. And you really could see signs of where you need more mindfulness is if you're feeling stressed, irritable, angry, on edge, just kind of feeling fierce can be a sign. Those are my signs. And those are signs actually that people that I work with talk about. And to me, those say that we're not being mindful. We're not in that inner peace and calm. And that's really the barometer I go by is, am I feeling that inner peace and calm? And that's really what I'm looking for. So if I'm on edge, irritable, what do I need to do? I need to connect with my inner self. And this is really personal. It's very personal. How you do it, what you believe is very personal to you. And I think there's some overarching ideas or activities that you could engage in that are mindful and spiritual practices. And some of them are like prayer. And prayer can be whatever you want to call it. It, to me, is talking to that higher entity. Whatever you call it, it is prayer to that higher entity, that higher being, that higher self about what's going on and getting more clarity. It can also be meditation where we get quiet and more reflective and really stop the chatter. I think that's one really big thing is to stop that chatter in our heads. To me, is a form of meditation. And engage in high-minded spiritual type readings, things that make you think about what might be going on inside of you and what it might mean to you. And that increases our spiritual practices. So then we have more coping skills, more coping mechanisms, more way to have an idea about how we fix it. So do you see, we're moving beyond the food because the food is very, very personal and based outside of ourselves. And what we're talking about in this mindful spiritual practice is coming back inside of ourselves. So it's really finding fulfillment beyond what's going on physically, what's going on outside of us. And I think of it once again as nourishment for the soul. It's feeding that love, that sense of direction, that connection. And there's a lot of things you can do. I was thinking about this when I think about these mindful spiritual practices. There are things that I've done, especially this year, starting at the first of the year, which I've talked about often in my groups and in my podcast, about things that I've been doing pretty much daily. I have been doing daily journaling. I've been doing daily deep breaths, like with intention. I have been doing most days of yoga. I also have been including, I talked to somebody the other day more about it, is yin yoga, which is really just holding a pose without stress for a period of time. And it's really settling the body and settling the mind. That for me has been very, very helpful. And I want to actually incorporate, I've been doing a lot of yoga, a lot of power yoga, and I want to really move into more yin yoga and really of the sitting quiet in a yoga position. The other thing I've been doing for I don't know how many months, my husband and I have been doing, most weeks we've been taking hikes in nature, been going out to the wooded areas and hiking. And that has been something really profound because it gets me out of my head and into what's physically going on and just being very, very present. I'll have times where I'm hiking and I'll trip and I'll go, Kim, be focused on the ground. Kim, be focused on the ground. One foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And that really grounds me back into my body, which to me is more in my mindfulness because I'm just being very, very centered. So those are some of the things that I've been doing. And I have found I am less irritable. I feel less stressed. I can handle things that come at me in an easier way because I've been practicing more of this mindfulness. And the last thing I think of with mindfulness and spiritual practices is really embracing the idea of self-compassion, self-kindness, and our, sixth component is self-love. Really embracing those. I think there is increasingly more and more need for that because we've lost our center of who we really are and who we really want to be. And the starting point in that awareness is coming back to, am I being compassionate towards myself? Am I really loving towards myself? Am I getting back in touch with that really inner child, the way who I am in reality, who I really am, that inner being, and really am I reflecting that to the world, right? Am I reflecting that? So that I think is another idea that you can come away with. So if you're gonna look at increasing spiritual practices, mindfulness practices into your daily routine, let's go over some ideas about what you can do for yourself, and mix and match as you see fit. These are mine. These are my ideas. These are what I suggest to my clients. And I just encourage you to do it. So set aside time each day for reflection and meditation or meditation. Um, it doesn't have to be an hour. Give yourself a few minutes to just center yourself. Do what I did, what I like to do. I've talked about this. I do cards, the oracle cards, guide cards, happiness cards, whatever kind of cards to bring out and show and pick one and have that be your reflection for the day. Even a few minutes of this reflection can be very, very helpful. Second is keep a journal, write out your thoughts and emotions. I've talked before, and I'll link the blog that I have on my meditate or journaling practices that I like to do. I think that they're really helpful and they can keep you more balanced. I know they keep me more balanced when I do that more often. Um, the other thing I think of is seek out your spiritual mindful support communities. Really, who is keeping the high watch? Who are people and places that really connect you with that inner sense of goodness? Connecting with people on a similar path, journey, goal can get you back into what's real for you. The people that you just go, oh, I feel good when I listen to them, or I feel more centered after I've talked to them. Those are things to do. And lastly, I like the idea of engaging in activities that feed your soul. What is it that you do that feeds your soul? Make a list. I like that to be part of my wellness plan. What are the things that feed my soul? I talked about it earlier. Walking in nature. I've talked about practicing gratitude. Find something that resonates with you. Find spiritual readings. Find really focused, positive affirmations, right? All of the things can get you back connected to yourself because we want to move into that more mindful spiritual dimension, move while we're working on the physical and the emotional and the mental, but we also can include that mindfulness, that spiritual practice. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to do that. Send me an email with what you're doing. What is your spiritual mindfulness practice that you do? I love listening to those because they encourage me. Everybody encourages me by what they do, and I'd love to hear what you do. So this is Kim McLaughlin. Thank you all for showing up, and I look forward to talking with you later. Bye-bye.